Welcome to the Great Man Within podcast. Every episode designed to help you discover and live the great man within you. Yesterday, I introduced a concept that has really helped me to develop my emotional fluency. And when I say emotional fluency, I mean my ability to actually feel a feeling, to name that feeling, to be with that feeling, and then to transform that feeling if I desire. But the most important parts, at least at first, are to actually be able to feel a feeling and then name it, and then to be with it. And then from that stage, to be able to transform that feeling from an empowered state. And the concept that I shared with you yesterday was your emotional board of directors, where you are the chairman. And just a quick summary of what that is, and I encourage you to go back and listen to that episode because it provides a really powerful context for this conversation today, is picture yourself seated as the chairman at a huge board of directors, a boardroom table, where every chair is represented by a different emotion or feeling that exists inside of you. To actually give things like these negative emotions that we typically try to vanquish from our existence, like anger, jealousy, shame, frustration, resentment, like fear, insecurity, anxiety. Any of these things actually do deserve a seat at the table. We need to be able to feel those feelings, those emotions, because they're communicating something to us about what may be out of alignment with our values, what may be a threat to our system, a part of us that may be outdated, that needs an old part of our operating system that's in need of an evolution or an upgrade. But to not give, so first of all, to give those emotions and feelings a seat at the table so they can communicate something, but to not give them the gavel, to not let them hijack the meeting, always remaining in a state of being the chairman and knowing when enough is enough. And through this process of allowing voices at the table, it enables me and it will enable you to access your full range of depth of emotions and feelings. This is where life becomes interesting. This is where you learn who you really are. This is where you become a leader who people can feel and trust because you're able to access all of these emotions, not suppress or deny, nor be dragged around by them. That's essential. And my leadership and authority and leadership of self has skyrocketed over these past few years as I've been working with this concept. So today, again, go back and listen to yesterday's episode about building an emotional, a board of directors for your emotions. Today, I want to give you a specific process that you can use to welcome an emotion or a feeling to the table that you don't like very much, that you have been ignoring or suppressing or trying to snuff out, or a part of you that you hate. This is going to be a process that is very simple, powerful, that you can use over and over again to welcome these parts of you that you're at odds with, to develop a deeper relationship with this part of you, and to transform that relationship in an empowered way from your seat as the chairman at your board of directors. Roxane Gay wrote in her book, Bad Feminist, that we are a mass of contradictions. And what she's saying there is that, do you know the experience of being comfortable and secure and also feeling anxious and insecure at the same time? Do you know the experience of feeling like, I'm glad to have a rest, but I'm so fucking bored? Do you know the experience of, I want intimacy and closeness, but I also want freedom because I'm overwhelmed by and suffocated by the people in my life right now? Of course you do. There are different parts of us, inside of us, that are constantly at odds. The yin and the yang, right? The masculine and the feminine. These are all, we are very complex human beings that have a range of emotions and feelings, and we very rarely feel one thing and one thing only at once. Nostalgia is that experience of feeling like deep love and sadness at the same time. It's strange, right? These are weird emotions, but maybe they're not, right? Like we label them weird because I think we've been told that we have to feel one way at any one point in time, when in actuality we are always a mass of contradictions. And Roxane Gay, the example that she gives is that she's a feminist who, deeply feminist, but also listens to gangster rap because it's so catchy and she loves the beats. And gangster rap is oftentimes, the thing that perpetuates any kind of advancement in feminist rights, right? It's misogynistic, it's toxic in many cases, but she can't stop herself from listening to it. And she admits that, right? So there are these parts of you that are seemingly at odds with what you really want in your life. And I want to share with you a specific example from my life. If you've listened to this show, you know that I spent 4 years recovering from sex addiction between 2013 and 2017. I no longer identify at all as a sex addict. This process that I'm about to teach you helped me radically transform my relationship with my feelings and emotions, where I was being dragged around like wild horses after spending decades suppressing those very feelings and emotions, and then transforming that to a healthy, loving relationship with the things inside of me that I've been ignoring for so long. And now I'm in an empowered state with those very feelings, emotions that I had either suppressed or been dragged around by. Okay, so back in 2011 and 12, before I'd entered Sex Addicts Anonymous, where my compulsiveness, where my addictive behavior was at its height, what I would find, let's say on a Sunday night, is when I'd be by myself and it would be the Sunday scaries would start to set in, right? The 48 hours where I just kind of escaped from all my work, all of the stuff that had piled up that I hadn't gotten to, it would now start to bubble to the surface, realizing that I'd be going back to work the next day and I'd be sitting on my couch by myself alone, and I'd also feel lonely. This confluence of anxiety of the work, loneliness, feeling bored, maybe hungover from, whatever I'd done the night before. And all of that started to produce this feeling that I wanted to get rid of. And the way that I would get rid of that would be diving into porn or sexting a number of women to see who would engage with me, and helping to quickly transmute that feeling, to get out of the feeling of overwhelm and anxiousness so I could numb it out and take a breath. That was my MO. There was one woman who reflected this back to me, and I'll forever thank her for this gift. She was like, if it's Sunday night, I know I'm getting a text from you, Dominic, because you're bored and and whatever it is, and I know the thread. You're just going to engage in sexual fantasy with me, and I just want you to know it's fucking boring, it's predictable, and I think you're lame. And what that did was she gave me that gift of the between the eyes call out, where I was like, oof, it hurt, but it was also like a thank you, because I was just on autopilot, deep in drift. So what that did was that caused shame, that I was seen in that way by her, that I had shown up that way in her life, that there was this part of me that just was disgusting. Like I felt that this part of me was disgusting, was revolting. And that sent me into a deeper level of shame, right? And what I wanted was to annihilate this part of me. Naturally speaking, I just wanted to get this thing away from me. Let's stop it forever. So here's where the process begins. Instead of looking at this part of me as revolting or that I should annihilate, I actually invited this part of me to the table to have a seat with me. I looked at this part of me as if it was his own entity, almost like another human being, sitting in a chair across from me, right? And these are techniques that I learned from NLP, which is where Tony Robbins bases his whole methodology around. I studied for 2 years at the NLP Center of New York, learning these practices with Rachel Hott and Stephen Leeds, two wonderful lifelong practitioners of the craft. And so this part of me is now sitting at the table, And before I engage in dialogue, the essential setup is to assume that this part of me has a positive intention for its existence. That's essential. Because when I'm looking through the frame at this part of me, that this thing exists because it has a positive intent for me as Dominic, the fully integrated Dominic. This part of me wants the fully integrated Dominic to be happy. And if I can look at it through that lens, even if I don't agree with its tactics or techniques or behaviors, then I can understand why it exists in the first place and develop a loving relationship with it. And so when I looked at this part of me that I felt is disgusting, the part of me that just was overwhelmed or anxious and then would reach out to women or go into porn, I asked it, what do you want? And what it said to me when I gave it that space with loving compassion, it was like, Dominic, I just want your emptiness and pain to go away. And I'd never heard that word before, emptiness. Because it was so painful for me to hear, to feel that I actually had an emptiness inside of me. I'd never used that word before. I'd never allowed myself, because I never wanted to believe that there was like a cavern or an emptiness inside of me. And this part of me existed to try and protect me from that, to try and fill that void. And for a long time, its short-term tactics and techniques helped me avoid the deeper pain of that emptiness. And in that respect, like I could have gratitude for this part of me. And so I thanked this part of me and I said, thank you for trying so hard to protect me, and also I'm grown up now, and it's time for me to look at this deep level of emptiness. It's time for me to stop shortcutting. And I'm going to need your help when situations like this arise in the future where I feel alone or overwhelmed or anxious, that before that stimulus hits and you respond with your typical techniques and solutions, that I need a space to be able to feel that emptiness, to be able to consider the women who I'm texting, who I may be imposing myself upon, to short circuit the trajectory where I jump onto the computer and look at porn, to ask myself, like, what is it that I really need in this moment? And sometimes it's going to be going deeper into the pain of that emptiness so I can get to know that feeling, that part of me. So I want to thank you for protecting me. And are you willing to grow with me? Because I'm here agreeing with you, knowing that we both want to feel full. And this part of me said, yes. And it said there may be times as I'm growing and I'm learning in the future where I just show up, and I'm going to show up so quickly, and I'm going to be so conditioned to doing what I used to do that sometimes I won't be able to help myself. But if you can be patient with me, I will grow with you. If you can be this compassionate with me as you are right now, then I won't feel ashamed. And that will help me to grow. And I said, you got it. And so we, in my mind, shook hands, actually gave each other a big hug, like looked in each other's eyes and loved each other. And now this part of me that I used to be repulsed by, that I wanted to vanquish, I integrated fully, not fully, but began that process of integration where I could love that part of me, even if I didn't like the techniques and tactics. And over the course of time, that part of me grew bigger, grew more refined, and it communicated with me differently. And so now here I am years later, I still find myself on the couch on Sunday night. I don't have the Sunday scaries because I'm doing what I love now, and I've got a bunch of habits and other things to keep my work fully in check. But I do feel that loneliness sometimes because I'm not in a partnership. And where that used to feel like an emptiness, today it feels like a beautiful experience, even when there's pain. It's this contradictory feeling of feeling lonely and also feeling so excited, knowing that the woman of my dreams is on her way. Knowing that when I do have that relationship, I'll be able to look back on those moments where I sat with the loneliness, and instead of diving into porn or imposing myself upon other women for my sexual gratification or to fill my void, that I stayed strong and that the payoff was there. How much am I going to love myself and be proud of myself for showing up in that way? That, my friends, is a complete 180 from where I used to be. This is available to you by inviting the parts of you to the table in a loving, compassionate way, assuming that that part of you exists with positive intention, even if its tactics and techniques are out of date or you don't like them very much. There is a way to establish contact with these parts of you, to integrate, to love them more deeply, and to grow together so that you can live that great man within you. Hey, if you enjoyed this episode and you are not yet subscribed to this podcast, what are you doing? Hit the subscribe button, share this with a buddy, let him know that he needs to get in on this as well. Have him subscribe, and that way you can continue to do the inner work, not alone, but living with other great men beside you.